Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast from HeadHunters Northwest. And today I am so excited. I have been asking Elliot, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Silencer Shop, if he would please consider being on my podcast. And I'm going to tell the listeners why this has been such a big deal to me. Elliot is one of the people in our industry that never talks about himself, never takes credit himself, and is behind the scenes for more things than I can count. And yet, when I go to events like NRA, guess who's on the register helping the customers? You know, the actual buyers of the product. So this is really a treat. And thank you, Elliot, because I know that you're doing this for me as a favor. But I really want people to hear about your story. And I really would like them to hear about your experience, because you don't necessarily come from the firearms industry. And you didn't come into this saying, I have to have every silencer in the room. You are a person that has come in and made your way and earned your way, pretty much self-made in this whole circus that we live in every day.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it. You're right. I don't do a lot of interviews. I love for my team to do that. And the folks on our team who have been in the industry for a long time and I think are very good, stewards of the industry. And I pride myself on being in the background and putting people of passion and power in places to do good and great. So thanks for humoring me here. I hope I'm not too awkward.
You won't be. I won't let you be. We've had too many great conversations. I admit that I do seek you out and force you to visit with me whenever we're at the same event. So, okay. So what I'm kind of interested in is, can you walk us? We're going to get to your team and give them all this kind of credit, but people don't know who you are. And what I'd love for them to know is a little brief about your background, who you are and how you got to Silencer Shop. And then tell me about when you started until now, the changes that you have been able to help the organization make. So let's hear a little bit. I'd love to hear about your career.
Sure. Yeah. My career has been all over the place. So originally I grew up in the Bay Area during the .com boom, bubble popping, and then boom again of just Silicon Valley. So I've been around a lot of risk, a lot of reward, a ton of risk, and a ton of failure. And throughout that career, I would say, my first big leap into work for me was just in an auto shop. My dad worked in the auto industry growing up, and pushing brooms, dipping products in paint thinner, all that good stuff. And then one day he just had this idea. He's like, I wonder if I can make this 600 feet, that's a bunch of service manuals, a little teeny piece of plastic that gives, a readout on a screen, because he's not a technical dude. I wonder if I could do that. And then it worked out. And I always joke that my dad's been chasing 600 square feet since. How does he how does he make each 600-foot environment that he's in more efficient, more profitable? And that was really impactful for me as a kid. Looking at how you can take this thing that seems too heavy to lift and you can condense it into something that maybe the eye can't see, right? And then process it from there. So I've taken massive career risks throughout it. So my first real professional job was working ops for family office. And essentially what I did is I went in on investments. I executed on the office's principles. So you'd find SMBs, small to medium-sized businesses that needed capital to grow. And then I would be the one to go in and execute on the principles of the investment, basically saying, okay, if we're here to make sales grow, then what we need to be focusing on is, a 3x80, or we need to be doing like an 80-20 split, or focusing on those 20% of the services or products that are driving 80% of the revenue, and really extend that out to make sure that we have the lifeline to either be risky or to make these other investments into the business to create other lines of revenue.
Wow.
So putting that at a high level, that's what I did. It took me all over the world, which was really cool. I got to work in Europe and South America. And then also as a result of that, I was able to work with an organization in South America that was a tech company called One Buy.
Hmm.
And essentially, my brief time there, we created the first tokenized 16-digit credit card. So
Wow.
it would randomly generate all the time. Like after a certain period of time in Brazil, theft is high, 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 high. And so the idea was, cool, they're eventually going to get your information, but what is going to be the valuable information? So we worked with launching partners and this one very large entity. And that was a really interesting pivot. Worked there for a bit. And then I should say consulted, though I was part of an outside group. And then went to a manufacturing space in Brazil. And then that was Brazilian steakhouses. Gained a 90% market share on the commercial side, in the kitchen side, working with contract manufacturers, core like our actual manufacturing facility in Caxias do Sul, and then with contract manufacturers all over the world. And then between there and working in the artificial intelligence space, I did some consulting. Some of that bounced me around in Africa. Some of that just because there's some tea. A lot of tea comes from East Africa. A lot of people don't know that. So I was doing nutraceuticals for a little bit. And then got into artificial intelligence, was there for a while. And that was facial recognition. Did that with, South by Southwest, Ernst and Young,
Wow.
all the way down to kids camps, like all sorts of cool stuff, just getting people content that they wanted based on their biometry, or getting them access to information that they were looking for if it was core to the business. And then that was a really intense, required a lot personally from me. So I took a few months off. I put my dog in my Forerunner, and we traveled around the country to every national park we could go to.
How much fun.
It was really fun. The work was cool because the dog was able to come to work, right? And my dog is my best friend, Tate. But I felt like I neglected him for the years that we were building it. And when I saw an opportunity to leave, I was like, let's do it. And then I was shooting with a lawyer that works at Silencer Shop. And he was like, what do you want to do next? And I said, I don't know, but I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to have an impact on something I care about. And he's like, well, do you care about firearms? And I was like, well, yeah, we're shooting,
Yeah.
So I applied at Silencer Shop, and they refused my application the first time.
No kidding. Wow. That's interesting. A lot of this stuff I don't even know. This is all new information to me too, even though we visited all these times.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah, I've been all over. I am very lucky. I will say we grew up very poor, but my dad always wanted more and better. Immigrant family. He's always striving, pushing, pushing, pushing. When I was 17, I was convinced I was going to have to go in the military to be able to go to college, if I was even going to go to college. And like that was my whole life was built around, like that was what it was going to be, even with all the risk and everything that was out there. That was the way that was going to go. And then he had a very large success, and he's like, look, you have the opportunity to go to college. If you want to go to college, you can. If you want to serve in the military, absolutely. He goes, but you could be the first Aquila to graduate college.
Wow.
And so suddenly privilege was in my horizon, and it wasn't before.
I don't know if I would call it privilege, though. It's earned. Like your dad earned every penny of that.
Yeah, but I look at privilege as I had the privilege of choice.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, I had the ability to go, I can choose a path where I can have time, and I can not have to work if I don't want to. But my dad put such a drive in me. I interned at a private equity firm in college and worked as a pre and postnatal trainer to help pay my way through college.
Wow.
And it yeah. So anyway.
Good for you. Worked hard.
Yeah.
And so tell us about, so you evidently Silencer Shop decided to give you a try, even though they refused your resume the first time.
Mm-hmm. They did. The gentleman who hired me, who has since retired, but he called me back and was like, hey, look, I know you were looking at this one position, but we have another position in marketing. Would that be something you'd be interested in? And I've always worked on the periphery of marketing, and marketing is a big part of what you do in the spaces I'm from, but I was always on the biz dev sales side or product side.
Yeah.
All of those are right intertwined, right? Product marketing, and product get together, biz dev and marketing need to absolutely be aligned. So it was a kind of a natural thing. And I was like, yeah, I could do all the things you're asking. That's, fairly easy. I came into the industry thinking I was a gun guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I like firearms, but
Yeah.
this is a rabbit hole that I was not prepared for. The level of knowledge and expertise and passion and like knowing when like a certain like trigger was changed on a model that was like 30 years ago is like mind blowing to me that someone can remember those things. And remember it in the detail, and then you can kind of see the little twinge of like a smile because they know where they were when they like when those changes were happening. They probably have a shooting experience with it. It was just cool to see. So I got into
Yeah.
the space, and here I am at Silencer Shop.
How does your past experience when you came to Silencer Shop kind of just it's a whole lot more really than marketing, because you're in my experience, we've kind of talked about this, you're really analytical.
Very, yeah,
I mean, that's not usually always hand in hand with marketing.
right, and not in the industry. Yeah, so again, growing up in the tech space and when we were around it, you don't realize that you're being exposed to digital marketing, but you are the whole way through, right? Especially
Hmm.
as it was digitizing rapidly around me. So some of
Yeah.
the stuff that I guess I just know because it was happening around me and it's there.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but I am extremely analytical, probably to a fault. And I definitely pride myself on having good data to make great decisions for awesome people. And it's an important facet of what's happening. I hear a lot of conversations in this industry where people are like, "Well, I feel like this is the way to go,"
Hmm.
and I think that that's a good thing because instinct and intuition, the world wouldn't change without it, right? Because
Hmm.
if you only
Yeah.
look at data, a lot of times data, sources and you can create really nasty feedback loops where the information you're measuring, of course, is only going to tell you the tell you're going to know because you're only pulling it off information you know. And so you have to know when to be analytical, when to use analysis, and when to, as my dad likes to say, head hard balls in that order.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to adjust. So the analysis sometimes is a limiting factor if you don't
So
do it correctly.
the analysis, how do you use that to help you in marketing? Because I'm thinking of a time we sat in a luncheon and there were analytics in front of us, and I asked you, how do you use this information? And you were very focused the whole time, and it was very interesting to me to have you explain to me how you use that in marketing.
Yep. Yeah. If I mean, data can tell you any story you want. I can look at the same data set and make a good case or a bad case if I want to. So it is a manipulative tool. To be fair, but if you're trying to understand a landscape, right? Think of somebody who's blind, who's using technology to see or using other senses to kind of get a
Hmm.
gauge of where things are going. That's essentially what the information is, right? Like you could try to predict future sales, you can create forecasting models, but you also have to
Right.
understand there are macro conditions that you have to think about, right? Competitors can be releasing something new that can saturate that model, right? Or you can have something that's being released, which this industry loves to do, that cannibalizes sales of other things, and they don't think of end of life well. And so there's a lot of
Yeah.
analysis that can be put in there, and those are honestly a mixture of quantifiable and qualifiable characters, or quantifiable and Jesus. There's qualitative and quantitative, right? So
Right.
on our side, when you're looking at it, you can look at the numbers, right? The things that just give you a number readout, and then you can look at other materials that are more of like conditional factors, like states of being. So if you're looking at something that you want to run like actual analytics on, that's going to be numeric. If you want to run
Hmm.
something that's a bit more characteristic, you can run analytics, but then you're also going to have a different set of assumptions you're going to make based on the tools that you can use.
Right.
So
So
analysis is,
how do you take some of that though? And it's like, I don't want to get into take any of the trade secrets or anything from Silencer Shop, but if you're taking all this data, you're analyzing it, are you using that to help work with sales? Are you using that to help figure out where the marketing dollars go, which trade show to attend, how to design things? What do you do with that?
yeah. So the first thing that I like to agree on with all of our partners is like what matters to you, right? I don't want
Hmm.
to be cliche, but the book Measure What Matters, which could be a lot shorter, but is a really great example of finding something that you can measure and agree to measure together, uh,
Hmm.
and then you can share performance. I think a lot of organizations, if they don't set the right KPI, right, the key
Hmm.
performance indicators together,
Yeah.
the partnership may flounder just because people haven't agreed on like what we're eating for dinner, or in this case, what we're measuring as success.
Yeah.
So with our manufacturers, we said, whether it's they want to measure order value, right, their average order value, AOV, or if they want to measure, growth in revenue, or they're trying to acquire new customers, right, and they're like, hey,
Hmm.
we want to do this, and we want to do it through a big promo, or we're trying to make a big splash. So we set whatever goal it is that we're trying to accomplish, and then I actually customize weekly reporting for each of them. So all of our
Oh, do
partners,
you really?
yeah. So we have a BI tool that we use that I script out that basically runs custom for each manufacturer, and it allows them to measure their performance at the weekly level against what's happening at Silencer Shop. They see the traffic that they get on our site, right? They're going to see
Hmm.
their sales. They're going to see it down to the region, down to the zip. And we do that with our core partners to establish baselines for success. So we use data, and I use it in a way that's more visual, because
Hmm.
I think that's easier for all groups. Like you and I talk
Really
about
smart.
diversity and inclusion, and I
Yep.
really harp on inclusion because you know people don't always include all the departments, all the people that they need to make the right decisions. And
Yep.
having data not be limited to a table, which can sometimes leave the imagination limited,
Yeah.
visualizing it.
Very much.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer of visualizing data.
So I do want to go to the diversity and discussion like we had talked about with your team. But before we do that, can you share with our listeners? And I didn't think about this, but we should have probably started with tell us what Silencer Shop is, because you and I kind of know. I mean, I kind of know about what the business model is and also about their model. And then we can talk about the team.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so Silencer Shop is the nation's largest NFA distributor. We work as an agent between customers making their firearms quieter, and getting their applications as fast and efficiently as possible through the ATF. So we have a network of kiosks and awesome powered by dealers around the country, thousands of them, in 42 states, where people can go in, use our kiosk, get all their information on file, and then shop for silencers as if they're buying something on Amazon. But what's really cool about us, because we have this giant e-com focus, right, where you can buy any
Mm-hmm.
major, high performing silencer on silencershop.com. Um, every purchase that you do for a serialized item goes straight back to your local gun store. So if you buy a silencer on silencershop.com, right, and you select, White Birch Armory,
Mm-hmm.
White Birch Armory is going to get a cut of that sale as if they sold that exact thing in their storefront, not a sliver of it, but as if they sold it in their storefront. And we're really,
Wow.
so that's Silencer Shop and what we do. But for any NFA item, whether it's an SPR or a silencer, um, you can get it here, and you can support your local business doing it.
That's really great. I didn't know about that piece. So your customers are not only consumers, but
Mhm.
you also work your customers also the manufacturers that you're buying the products from. So there's loads and loads of choices, different kinds of silencers, education, information, and then your customer is also possibly the retailers and the
Mhm.
ranges because you're working with them. So really you're the liaison for the whole process.
Yep, yep. So we work in the background for a lot of folks, on the the B2B side, right? For businesses to businesses,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that we do mostly because we're a distributor, and then we have our consumer focus, which is we make it easy for retailers who are looking at their retail storefront and looking at maximizing revenue or creating the best possible offering for their customer base, right? Silencer shops, just like you don't need to worry about the SOT, right? The NFA side, the National
Mm-hmm.
Firearms Act side of things, right? We will take care of it. It's a super easy system. You can click and drag. You can select items to customers really quickly. We try to make it as easy as the ATF will allow it.
And fast. I see some of those posts on social media where there's a little snippet picture of when someone purchased and then when they get the product, and it's remarkably fast because of all of the background that you've put together there.
Yeah, our CEO is very active on the Hill. Our team in general is very active on the Hill, but our CEO is an extremely selfless individual, and puts everything he can towards
Hmm.
expediting the Form 4 process, which is what started Silencer Shop. His son is mostly deaf. He had a dealer he was
Interesting.
working with that just could not get the form right, and then was going out of business. So he had to like chase the guy down and like get his silencer from a storage unit. And then the next person who
Huh.
tried it failed. And he was like, he worked in software at the
Yeah.
Not back. He worked in software at the time, and was like, I can script this, I can do this.
Wow.
And then Silencer Shop has kind of grown since. And what's really cool about our CEO Dave is that he's never really lost sight of that mission.
Huh.
He's always been very, like you and I were talking about earlier, super behind our trade associations, because you have to be behind them, good, bad, and different, whatever. Like we need to have them in order for the industries to stay solvent, to have some sort of screen between us and the regulatory bodies.
Yep.
He is one of the most, if not, I think the most like spending and like active
That's
uh,
great.
2A member on the Hill as an individual, just because he believes in this to his bones.
Wow, that's fantastic. I didn't know that either. I'm learning all kinds of things on this from you.
Yeah, we're
That's
very
really
proud.
cool.
Yep.
What you were telling me that Silencer Shop has a motto, or a mission, or
Yeah.
and what is that?
Yeah. So we have a couple. Obviously, silencer ownership simplified is our biggest thing. We just want to make it simple and easy so folks can move on with their life. Um, you a lot of things can happen in the background so that you can protect your hearing and protect everyone else around you and have a better time doing it. And then the other is about our manufacturers, right? It baked into our actual employee handbook is respecting the manufacturers.
Hmm.
So it's really important to us that our manufacturers and us have a really strong relationship. We don't have a house brand. We're not that kind of business, right? Everything that we do is about finding the best performers, right? The most prolific brands in the industry, and
Yeah.
making their accessibility to people who want to use it easier. And with that comes a lot of um, sacrifice on our side to make sure that they're as accessible as possible. So I really love that we put others first.
Yeah.
It's in the nature of the organization, and we're held to that standard.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We talked not that long ago about a position for your team. You run all the whole marketing, so chief marketing officer, and you have this team that works with you, and I know you're very team focused. And I've met some of your team, and they're incredible and they're funny. um, and I know that you had been talking about a position you were hiring for and how hard it was to find the right person, and you sent me the job description to look at, and I mean, I don't, is there an emoji that your mind is blown? Because, you know, um, I I really loved it, because tell us if you can share, and I know we don't need to read it or anything, but tell me about your thought behind building that job description. When you're thinking about the person you wanted to hire, people normally say, here's the bullet points, here's what they must have, here's what their duties are, here's the nice to have. But
Yeah.
yours wasn't like that.
No. I think you have to be wittier than Winston Churchill, rawer than Eddie Murphy, more passionate about firearms than Samuel frickin' Colt, and possess more poison grace than Mrs. Kennedy. Yeah, it. So Silencer Shop has a ton of humor, right? Like we work ultimately as a distributor and processor of information, right? So you think we would be like Intuit Simple, like Intuit, like the tax software. Um, but sense of humor is a really big thing here. Dry sense of humor in particular, just like really punny dryness, and that's a big part of how Silencer Shop's initial marketing was just very punny. Our wait music and everything like that was just like immense amounts of sarcasm. Um, so for us, we try to filter at the application level for humor. One, because gallows humor is pretty important here, right? The ATF or other regulatory bodies can make changes that we have to make code adjustments to, in some cases that day, and we need to do that quick. And in order to do that, you kind of got to whistle while you work. You
Yeah.
need to have a team that can just commiserate with you and be like, wow, crack that joke to get you through it. And then the other part of it too is I think humor is a baseline human requirement for empathy and sympathy, because
Mm-hmm.
you can see what somebody else is going through, and whether or not make a joke about it or make a joke with it. It's a good leading indicator whether or not somebody is empathetic and sympathetic. I've made some hires for people that I would say are in prior jobs that are maybe lack humor, and I find that they don't mesh well with others as a
Mm-hmm.
result. Haven't had that problem here at Silencer Shop because the industry is very much about that kind of crew, but it's something I learned early on in my career.
So you recently hired that person. You did find them,
I did.
and it took 6 months.
6 months. Yes.
6 months. So if you get a job at Silencer Shop, you better be happy about it because it took a long time to find you, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your team because I have really enjoyed sitting down having conversations with you about what does diversity really mean.
Yeah.
And I love talking with you about this because I think people hear those words or, sometimes are like, ugh, I just don't want anything else shoved down my throat. And yet with you, I've met some of your team. They're diverse in every way.
Yep.
Could you get a more diverse team?
Yeah. I mean, yes, we can.
Not
I
very
think,
easily.
yeah, I think for me, I really, D&I is very important. Full stop. Like it's just an important thing. Inclusion is what I really, really harp on first. Is you have to have an inclusive environment for the diversity to kind of follow. So for me, I look at it in reverse. One of my mentors early on, when I was in college, worked in the diversity and inclusion department of McDonald's, and I was able to
Huh.
operate pretty closely at that. And that organization is all about diversity and inclusion. Pat Harris is an incredible woman.
Huh.
I've had the luxury of meeting her a few times. I've had the luxury of reading her book many times. And it's one of those things where you the industry is hard to pull from it because the consumer base is mostly white males. So in
Mm-hmm.
order to pull people who want to be in this space, you have to work on the out parts of the industry that it's not being serviced. It just takes longer. It's more resource heavy, and then
Yep.
there are also just not a lot of there's not a ton of diversity in the space.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been changing since I got here to where it is now. A lot of
Huge difference.
organizations deserve tremendous credit for having a very diverse team. But for me, inclusivity is where I started first. Everyone should be able to do what it is that we sell or whatever it is that we serve. And I've had some great team members who've been awesome pioneers of that. And it's really cool to see. I come from an immigrant family, right? My fiance
Mm-hmm.
is from an immigrant family. So those things are core in what's around me and what's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do try to drive for that as much as possible. It's a moving target. It's a difficult target to hit, especially in this industry. But it's something that I think is very important. And we're lucky at Silencer Shop. It is very diverse.
Yeah, and it's supported internally, but it sounds to me like not only is that important internally, but it's also important externally as you're working with customers and selling these products, from the manufacturer to the consumer. You're considering that in every aspect of your job, not just internally, but outgoing as well.
Yeah. Finding people
You're,
that create an inclusive environment is
yep.
is just critical. One of the most recent things we've done with it is supporting Pew Party, which is a really cool event. And the folks that spearhead and pioneer that event are really just trying to create a space where it's like we shoot too, right? And I think it just matters to have stuff like if you're trying to do it and it looks like
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to do it, I don't think it happens. It just needs to
Mm-hmm.
be a thing that's like baked into. Like I said,
Yeah.
I really harp on inclusivity first, where people
Yeah.
feel like they can be a part of it, they can see themselves in it. Like it has to start there, and then I
Yeah.
think diversity follows. So
Yes.
INC is probably
Right.
more how I see it. I don't know that I'm the norm in that, but yeah. So
Well, I met a couple of your team. I think we were at NRA, and they just made me giggle. They're so funny. And one of your team members, I can't remember his name, so don't say it.
okay.
But I just love talking to him to hear his accent, but I could only understand about every 10th word because it's so thick. And I just loved it. I just loved it because you have people that are from all walks of life, and what better department needs that than marketing?
Yeah, we all do. Yeah, it's just a good reminder. I grew up in an environment that, like, to coin the phrase, like post racism, which terrible term. But I just grew up in a place where like you just didn't see the world that way. People didn't see the world that
Yeah.
way. They
Yeah.
didn't care. I would say probably what you were trolled about the most was whether or not your food was like universally accepted or not, right? That's like the extent of I think what my childhood experiences are of it. As I got into a teenager, I started to see the world a little bit more of the thems and us's
Yeah.
and how people saw that, and that's always made me really uncomfortable. Just because there's just not the way that my family raised me to be or to see. But I always felt like we were the underserved one. I'm lucky in my family, not to use the term too much, but like I pass, right? But like my brother looks very much not like me.
Is that right?
Yeah. And so, he definitely got, more of the brunt of that. And so there's
Yeah.
a certain amount of it that's like, I kind of have this like weird, like Goldilocks zone of like what my last name is, right? Where I
Yeah.
grew up, what I've been around, and then how I look and come across to people. So I can maneuver a little bit more, but it wasn't as easy for my brother when he was younger at all. It wasn't easy for him at all. So it's been something that also helps drive for it. But I'm by no means happy with the direction we're going. I'm happy we're heading towards the direction we are.
Yeah.
I want more people shooting. I want all Americans seeing firearms as a thing they can do, not just some token thing that white people use.
Yep.
Because it's not true.
But you're building that, I think. I think you're building that not only with your team, but in your marketing.
Yeah.
And your experiences in life have brought you here to help this industry.
Yep.
And I'm thrilled that you were talked into and forced into doing this. Because I know you're not about talking about Elliot, but I think that you are very unusual for our industry and for a CMO role, in that you have all of this experience and skill set that you bring that really has helped Silencer Shop get to all new levels that I just have a hard time believing they would have been able to do otherwise.
I believe to my core that we would be here with or without me.
I know you do.
I very much appreciate the support and belief. But we have access to wonderful talent. We have a CEO that has zero ego. Like he literally,
that's
he just
amazing.
wants people who are passionate and effective.
That's great.
And as a result, allows each of his departments to be passionate and effective. We are at Silencer Shop, we don't just market ourselves, we market our manufacturers, right?
Yep.
When I say our manufacturers, we look at it like because they're part of us, like
they're partners. They're true partners. And I've talked with them. I've talked to not all of them, but many of them that work with Silencer Shop. And it's a very, very valued relationship.
Yep. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. I will say the success and drive and position of this company is 100% a reflection of the people. I'm going to curse, but it's the way I say it. My job here at Silencer Shop is to get people what they need and stay the fuck out of their way.
Yeah.
We do check-ins based on the discussed performance. I get them what they want, but I do not get in their way. And that's how it needs to be. And if I am, then I need to take a look at myself and be like, hey, dude, why do you feel like you need to be interjecting right now? What is that wasn't agreed upon to performance, right? And I like to stay in the background for that. So yeah, it is uncomfortable for me to talk about me. I love talking about others. I love building others up.
Yeah.
I spent my 30s trying to be like my father, or my 20s to my 30 to being 30, trying to be like my father. And it's a harder thing for me. I admire my dad. He's one of my heroes. But I am more of a servant leader. I like to get people to the goal. And so I very much enjoy being in the background and watching people succeed and praising the shit out of them when they do.
Yes, I know you are. Your team loves you. I know it. And I know it. And you're a wonderful manager. And we're going to have to do another one of these, maybe at SHOT Show or something, because at some point I want to come back around and talk about management, because you and I just talked about, some ideas on why isn't this working and how do you manage people. But we'll do that at another time. Maybe at SHOT Show, we'll do a live recording. But thank you, Elliot, for being on here. Thank you for sharing with us your information. And I am honored. And I would encourage anyone who wants to learn more about the latest and greatest ways you can use analysis and marketing and obviously any sort of tech information, you really should reach out to Elliot. And if you don't know how to reach Elliot, then call me, because he is one of the great talents in our industry that we're very, very fortunate to have. And he has done a lot for Silencer Shop and for the people that work for him. So thank you, Elliot. I appreciate you being on our podcast. And this is it for today on HeadHunters Northwest. And we'll look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Shailene. Appreciate you.